Hey there, everyone, and welcome back to our next episode of PokePaths. Last time, when we left off, we had just beaten the Pewter City Gym and taken down Brock. We got the Bide TM. We also made one addition to our team, and we added Mac to our team, Mac the Pikachu. So I was saying earlier, I have never run a Pikachu on my own, outside of maybe Pokemon Yellow or so. So I'm really excited to use Pikachu here. I know he's the series mascot. I know it's probably overused and trite. But one of the most important things about getting Mac was that I now learned how to add the pause button to our streams. So as you probably saw from the last episode, I did not end up editing any of it because instead I realized how I could add the pause button to the software that I'm using to record. So I thought that that would be the win that I will take. So now I have learned how to pause, and I will make sure that I unpause when the timing is right. So once you beat Brock, there was a guy, I should have showed you, but there was someone who would block your path from getting out onto the next route. But here we now can get through, and we'll be heading toward Mount Moon today. So on our way we have Mac, we have Squirt, we have Mama. I think I'll move Squirt down. You know what, before we go this way, I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna see if we can buy repels at this point. I typically don't buy repels in a playthrough, but let's see. I think it's going to, oh, you know, we can't even buy them right now. Okay, well then we'll have to get through Mount Moon on our own. Sometimes repels are helpful when I can imagine if you're streaming or if you're recording this for other people, they don't want to see you battling back and forth and everything. So we might have to get through Mount Moon once on our own and go and heal up our Pokemon. Let's also do a little bit more switch training for Mac here. Now this is the very first time we're facing a last trainer. Mac actually should be able to do pretty well against this Pidgey knowing Thundershock. It's interesting that the very first move that Pikachu learns in the game. Whoa, okay. That did a lot more damage than I thought we were gonna get. Let's hope that was a high roll. Okay, good. Alright, then maybe we're gonna have to head back and heal up Mac at some point. Alright, let's not change our Pokemon, but let's do some switch training here. Let's bring Mama out. The emergency sound is so loud in this game too. Alright. Evasion, our favorite. Ugh. You know, it's one of those things that I never use evasive moves or moves that either lower the opponent's accuracy or that will boost my evasion. Ugh. You know, we're gonna get everyone some experience on this one. And I know it's coming. Alright, well, we can tank a Gust, or we don't have to. Alright. Good job, Squirt. Squirt's taking one for the team here. Oh, that's nothing. We are going to have to go back and heal anyway, because one of the best ways for our guys to get some good experience is if they actually face one of the Pokemon in the battle instead of doing some switch training. Alright, well, we're quickly heading back to Pewter City. Pewter City is pretty small. You know, when you really look at it, I think that there's some areas. You have that garden there. You have the Pewter Museum. I think it's really supposed to be more of a introduction town that you go in. There's not a ton that you can do in there. Alright. Let's head back out to the route here. So Route 3 you have a lot of trainers on this route, and a lot of variety of trainers. You have the last trainers, we'll see some bug catchers, we'll see a youngster as well. And one thing you might have noticed about this game that's different from the other games is that the trainers are only called by their class name. So, for example, it's just bug catcher wants to fight here. They aren't named with any first names like you'll have in later games where it'll be youngster Joey, for example, who's some other ones? Well, you have different lasses. I think Lass Caroline. You have all these various ones. But in this game, you just have the trainer class. Wow, Mac's defenses are not as great as I remember them being. Well, maybe we'll end up doing some more switch training then. We'll put in Mama so that way we can't get poisoned. We'll make it through a bit more times without having to run back to the Pokemon Center. So anyway, you have the last, you have the bug catcher, you have youngster on this route. You actually have a fair amount of trainers. Now, I think that this is supposed to get you ready, one for Mount Moon, but also for the upcoming Misty battle. Misty has quite a jump in experience in terms of levels when you end up facing her. And I've always found that Misty's pretty difficult if you don't have a Pokemon that can handle it. Now, funny enough, that's not exactly why I picked up Mac here. Mac is going to be able to handle Misty pretty well and is well worth the encounter that you'll get. But I have found that, I was going to use a different Pokemon to fill the role that Mac fills on our team of a special electric type. I decided maybe I'm going to switch things up in this one and, run it a bit differently. One of the reasons that I decided to play back through this game is there's a really good podcast to listen to called Experience Share. And Experience Share is a podcast that started by these two guys, Josh Fjellstad and Tanner Greenring. I don't personally know either of them, but I found their podcast, funny enough, during the pandemic, which this is now the second episode in a row that we're going to be talking about that. Or about something that happened during the pandemic. But when it lasted for 2 years and it was pretty recent, there's a lot that happens. And when you have a lot of time to yourself, you end up... I don't know why I just did growl twice. I meant to do tackle. Anyway, you end up doing a bunch of different work. And I think I mentioned on the previous podcast, but when the pandemic started, it was during my last year of law school. And so when that happened, you really, if you do law school, or I think even college, right, anywhere where you can decide your own course schedule, you usually end up taking a really heavy course load in the very beginning. This guy also, the comfy shorts, guy is notorious. Yeah, this youngster, I think this one becomes youngster Joey and his Rattata in future games. Youngster Joey becomes famous in the second game because he's the first trainer you battle, and he always calls you and talks about his top percentage Rattata. Ugh, that is not what I wanted. I thought we could tank one hit, but... Alright, we'll have to go back and heal up Mac. So anyway, he talks about his top percentage Rattata. And clearly he's a top percentage Rattata because he just took out Mac. But he becomes famous for that, and then also for talking about his shorts in this game. He kind of becomes a trainer that is shown in a lot of these games. Anyway, so to get back to Experience Share, I found their podcast during the pandemic, and it was one where it was during a time in law school where my course load was pretty light. We ended up actually going to pass-fail grades. And so at this point, you're getting ready to graduate. You really have everything lined up. I already had my job lined up, and all you needed to do was pass or fail your grades. So as soon as you didn't have to worry about getting an A in a class anymore, I think I even had enough points in the semester already to make sure that I could pass. We were definitely going back to get healed. So anyway, you ended up getting enough points to pass, and so I found the Experience Share podcast during that time. All right, Squirrel water gun. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm going to practice our very first time of pausing a recording. I'll see you all back here after we go heal. Okay, and we are back from healing. Hopefully this wasn't just silence for you all and that the pause button actually worked. I'll get back to the Experience Share story, but I wanted to explain the pause button real quick. I found out that it was because I had settings set toward how to stream as opposed to, you know what, I don't want to have to go back. So let's put Mama in so that way we don't get poisoned. Anyway, I realized that it was because of a setting that I had to tie this to streams, to live streaming. I had initially thought that I wanted to do a lot of live streams on this channel and go in, but I actually found that it's not that difficult for me to just record my progress here and then to post it online as opposed to just going live initially. I did set my account up that way though, so I needed to just change a few of the settings in order to make it so that way the pause button was right there. One thing that I do need to make a habit of though is making sure that I make sure we're unpaused so you don't lose any recordings. I think this Kakuna can do more than just harden, but let's see. I think I'm willing to take that risk because of all of the experience that Kakuna could give us. All right. So anyway, to get back to Experience Share podcast, it was a really great podcast, and I found it in around, I want to say May of 2020, when they were going through and doing a Gen 2 playthrough. So the way that podcast worked was they did, every week, they did a different gym. And so they would then, at the end of the week, they would go in and they would do a whole, about an hour-long podcast talking about their adventures that week. And when you sit there and you binge it, I would be going for long runs, or I would be sitting in my apartment. It was really cool to be able to play through a lot of those Pokemon games again with those guys. And that was really where I picked up Pokemon again. Now, I always grew up playing Pokemon and I really enjoyed it, but I enjoyed a lot of RPG fantasy type games as a kid. I loved Harry Potter growing up. I loved a lot of the Disney, like a Toy Story, and I loved getting immersed in a world, which is why I think I loved Harry Potter. I loved Pokemon. And I continued to play a lot. I think the first Pokemon game I ever owned, the first game that I ever owned myself was Pokemon Sapphire. That came out in 2003. And that was the first one my mom bought for me. Because I remember it came out around the time, or I got it around the time of my birthday. And my birthday's in September. So my mom ended up allowing me to get the game. And I got it because Sapphire is the birthstone for September. So I remember getting that game, and it was after I'd already played a lot of the Pokemon games from my cousins having them and whatnot. But I continued to play Pokemon. I fell off for a little bit, and then I really picked it back up again when Diamond and Pearl ended up coming out, Next Generation. And I played Diamond and Pearl a fair amount, but I really played Platinum a ton. I think Platinum came out when I was in my freshman year of high school. I spent a lot of time playing Platinum. And those Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum games were really the first time I went through and seriously played a Pokemon game. I'm playing with fire here because I could probably get Poison Sting or Poison... maybe I could get poisoned here, but maybe he doesn't know. Maybe this mute around doesn't know that. In any event, I really played Platinum a ton, and that was when I was. I think Diamond and Pearl was where I really started getting serious about playing, and then Platinum was just a whole nother level. But that was when I also had a Wii, so I was playing My Pokemon Ranch and Battle Revolution, and really getting into some of the, for the very first time, some online battling. Because online battling, competitive Pokemon I should say, has been around since Generation 1. But you never really had an online battle that you could play for competitive Pokemon up until Generation 4, the Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum games. So around that time, I was becoming more serious, and I think that a lot of the original Pokemon players were also starting to do that as Nintendo was adding that functionality into the game. I played then a good amount of Heart Gold, and I bought Black and White when they came out. I still have I think I have a white version. I still have it, but I never really, I think I beat the game maybe, but I can't really remember my playthrough all that well. However, I really fell off then when I went to college. I think you had more important things, and I started really just focusing on studies a bit more, focusing on other things. I would play here and there. I think I remember. I think I beat the first time I ever beat Red was the summer of my junior year of college, and but yeah, after that I ended up not. I really fell off from Pokemon for a while. I'm trying to think. I remember replaying sometimes, my senior year with some of my friends in our house. We would play, Fire Red and Leaf Green now again, because we had a GameCube hooked up to a huge TV we had, and we would play that with the GameCube and the Game Boy reader that I had. And then Pokemon Go came out right after I graduated from college, and that really ignited a lot of Pokemon fandom again. I can't believe it's about 10 years ago now that Pokemon Go came out. But that really was a turning point for the Pokemon franchise again. And I played Pokemon Go pretty religiously. At that time, I didn't know I was going to go to law school, or didn't know I wanted to, and I was in what's called a gap year. So I took some time off and ended up working at a job in central New Jersey, and really every day I would take a long walk at lunch, and that's when I would do a lot of my Pokemon Go hunting, and I really got into it then. But again, I never really turned back into playing the mainline games. I would just on again, off again play Pokemon Go. I really enjoyed a lot of those characters and the Pokemon I would get there, but I'm going to go back and heal because I'm on a story. I won't pause. But anyway, so I really played Pokemon Go on again, off again. Would go for a good solid few months and play again. And it wasn't until, though, the pandemic in around 2020 that I really picked up playing Pokemon games again. I was still living with one of the guys from college who I would play Pokemon with now and again. And so we ended up, we bought a Nintendo Switch, and I played a ton. Now, at this point, I hadn't really played X and Y. I had never played Sun and Moon. And I picked up the Let's Go game. And I just remember having so much fun with Let's Go. I know that this is going to sound like a typical Gen 1er, but it was just awesome to play through Kanto again with the updated graphics, with the following Pokemon. I really think that they did Let's Go really well. I know that a ton of people have issues with those games, but it was such a... I'll say this, that the Pokemon Company gets a lot of flack for playing into nostalgia, playing into the Gen 1ers, but I really do think that they did it well with that game. That game was a great way to bring people back in, to bring people also into the Switch generation. I think that, that was a real heavy hit. Let's switch to you know what? Let's tank a hit. Let's see if we can tank one more hit. Get out of Thunder Shock. Oof. Okay, now let's switch to Mama. Let's see what Mama can do. If not, we might have to switch back and forth with people. But anyway, I thought... Oh, that's awesome. Alright, well let's hit some Poison Stings. I know it's not going to do much, but maybe we can poison Jigglypuff. But anyway, I thought Let's Go was a great way to reintroduce a lot of fans back into Pokemon. Ride that high of Pokemon Go and continue to build the fan base back up. Alright, yet again, let's get the entire team some good experience. Oh, not Bubble. Actually, I forgot we had Water Gun now, so that's probably a little bit better. And Disable will fail because we're already disabled, and then Water Gun. Anyway, so I just remember having so much fun with that game. And then when the pandemic came, I bought Sword and Shield and started getting really into the Pokemon again. And that's when I found the Experience Share podcast. And that led me to replaying a lot of the old games during the pandemic and figuring out, you're getting a bit more into the competitive side to a Pokemon. I'm still nowhere near a competitive player. Like obviously no one is near Wolfie VGC. Like Wolf Glick is a great player. A lot of these guys are really strong. I still scratch the surface of some of that. This Pokemon Center is a great location. I don't think you can ever fly to it though. Maybe you can. But it was always really interesting to me that they just had a Pokemon Center located right here, right before Mount Moon. There is a guy who... Is this the Magikarp salesman? Yeah, he will sell you a Magikarp for $500. Now, some people think that this is a total ripoff. I actually think it's one of the best investments you can make if you don't have a Water-type Pokemon, because it's one of the first times you can get a Water-type in this game. And welcome to Mount Moon. Mount Moon can be a little daunting the first time you come in. This is actually, funny enough, one of the places I have one of my strongest memories of playing Pokemon as a kid. Alright. But I just remember distinctly playing Pokemon, I believe it was Pokemon Blue, with my cousin, and using my Squirtle to get through Mount Moon. Funny enough, it was when we were sitting waiting to be seated to dinner, and way back in the day, before you had cell phones and all, you could probably call ahead to restaurants. You would go to a restaurant, you would see if they could seat you, and if they couldn't, you would just sit there and wait. They would say, we can seat you in 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And you'd sit there, and that was a great time to be able to just sit there and play a Pokemon game. And because again, especially if this was during the school year, for instance, you didn't have backlights on a Game Boy. So, my parents would never let me play or keep the light on in the car. But you didn't have a backlight, so you weren't able to see a lot of the game. And you had to either go in blind, or you would have to wait until you would get into a lit room. Sometimes if you were lucky enough, your parents would be driving on the highway, and there was a lot of light on the highway, and so you could sort of hold the Game Boy to the side and try and see some of it. But especially if you were showing one of your siblings and you're trying to play together, that's nearly impossible. So anyway, it would be great when you would get to a restaurant and they would say, we'll seat you in 15, 20 minutes. That was music to my ears as a kid, because that meant, all right, I can boot up my Game Boy in my pocket and I can play for a little bit in a lit area. But to me, Mount Moon always seems so far away, because, to me, really Mount Moon was it was to me the mid-game. Once you passed Brock really was the initial tough fight for me. Oof, we are not going to be able to do much against this Clefairy, huh? Let's see. Alright, Alright, let's see what Mama can do. I want to lower some attack here because I don't want to have to go all the way back to the outside. Oh man, that's not at all what we wanted, huh? Neither of this. Okay, well, let's try one more time. Well, lucky for us, we're just going to be using water gun. Oh, man. Okay, well, the problem with sleep, too, is in this generation, sleep will just kill ya. Your guy will stay asleep. This is now the second turn. The issue with sleep is that the turn you wake up in this game is also technically a sleep turn. So now we know that we're also not going to be able to attack the next turn either. Yeah. Alright, well luckily we should be able to do some solid damage with water gun. Alright, there we go. You know, we're still kind of close to the entrance. What I think I might do after this battle is I might heal a little bit. Okay, let's go heal. Okay, we are back. Well, we were back for a little bit. All right, and here's Zubat. Zubat, I think, has a really nice sprite in this game. It is kind of scary. It looks very much like a bat. I'm sure there are people who hate the sprite, but I think it looks really good in terms of what Zubat is supposed to look like and what it continues to look like today. So I think they really did Zubat a lot of help in this generation. All right. An interesting part of Mount Moon is that Mount Moon is more linear than it seems on its face. And what I mean by that is that you have 3 ladders in the top, in what's called floor 1 of Mount Moon, where we enter here. And then there's the basement floors. Well, basement floor, but there are 3 entrances to the basement floor. You actually can get through them by just, the quickest way to clear all of Mount Moon and not have to backtrack is just to go into them in order. So as soon as you see this first ladder, you go down it, you explore, and then you come back up and you continue exploring floor 1. Hopefully Mac can just take all these guys out. I also always thought that the cheek on Pikachu looked like a big zit with a white head on it. And here we go, our first Team Rocket encounter. Rocket wants to fight. All right, Rocket sends out a Sandshrew, which I kind of forgot about. So let's see how you handle Squirt. Squirt's water gun should do solid damage, hopefully knock you out even. Ugh. Oh man. Okay, well, let's use Bubble. I always love the Bubble animation way more than water gun too. I know that I think water gun in this generation is 40 attack. Oof, and you know, that's tough to eat, but all right. Mac has really trained up pretty quickly too. But the bubble animation is just so much fun. Don't love that. Don't love that either. Come on. Alright. Nice. You know what? No, we're going to keep Mac in. Hopefully Mac can completely destroy. Alright. Sweet. Way to go. Good job, Mac. Might actually even be time that we can switch Mac out. Let's see where our HP is. Nah, Mac's still... Let's keep Mac in the front. Let's use one of our potions on Mac, though. Just that way we don't have to go back to go heal. There we have an HP up. Excellent. I'm gonna save that for right now. Gen 1 has very, very, very limited item storage space. And so you do want to use items like that, because I've always found that if I just put the item in my PC, I forget about it. Because it does take a whole lot of work to go back and forth and to take things out. But I don't know. I think that maybe we'll hold on to it for just a little bit until we round out our team a little bit more. So if we go explore down here, you'll find a few more battles and a few more items. Okay, you know what? No, we're not going to. Let's switch to Mama. So Magnemite is not a steel type in this generation because steel wasn't introduced until you had the next generation in Gen 2. However, the other electric type moves are not going to do much here, so you really want to, I probably don't want to use Mac in this fight. Get Mama some good experience. Way to go. Oh, and Voltorb. You know what? No, let's keep Mama in. I don't think Voltorb here knows any electric moves, so we can always pivot to Squirt. Squirt's not going to be able to do enough, but Squirt also has some good HP left. And we're probably going to want to heal anyway. But it's nice that our team is rounding into shape, at least in terms of all being on similar levels. Okay, way to go, Mama. Okay, Mama, there you go. Still keep Mac up front for now. Oh, we got a new potion. You know what? Maybe we'll just heal Mama up instead of going back to the... Yeah, let's do that. The other thing with items in this game is that you do want to use them because of that limited storage. Ah, shoot. Doesn't it always go that way? You overstep one little bit, and it comes back to bite you. Well, hopefully Mac can just take this guy out in one turn. All we lose is one power point. Thunderbolt, Thundershock. Okay. Oof, the rare candy is nice. Alright, let's fight this guy real quick, and then we'll go back around the other way. Alright, let's see what Bug Catcher sends out. Caterpie, huh? Nice. Once you start training Pikachu up in this game, Pikachu starts to do really well. The Metapod cry is also really funny in this game. It really does sound really like high pitched and like electronic too. What's cool about there's a really interesting background on the way that Pokemon developed the music to this game and the channels that they used. I don't know a ton about music. When I was a kid, I loved Pokemon a lot. You know what? I actually think now, no, we still should keep Mac in. I forgot that Squirt evolved, went up a level. So anyway, I was much more into sports and video games than music. But I really should have. I wish I had pushed my parents more to get me into music. But what's interesting is that there were 3 channels on the Game Boy that you could play music out of. And they could each play different tones. And that's how you were able to make a full melody. But because of the different channels, you really had 2 main channels. And that would allow you to play what was called a point and counterpoint, which are 2 different ways of playing music, from my understanding. And because you were able to because of the 2 channels, the best way that you could alternate them to really do a melody was through a counterpoint method of playing, which led you into playing a lot of symphony music like Bach and the Nutcracker, various different types of really famous songs. And music, you can get a lot of the melody through the Game Boy just by having the point counterpoint, or having a counterpoint type system. Now, I learned all of this because and this is going to be embarrassing, especially for people who think that I am much more cultured than I am, it's funny in that last December in 24, I was proposing to my fiance. And before we ended up going to our proposal, we went to go see the Nutcracker ballet ahead of time, because it was around Christmas time. And we're sitting there, and I am shaking because I have the ring in my pocket. I think she knows it's probably coming that day, but I'm still terrified. And we are sitting there watching the Nutcracker, and all of a sudden, the Dance of the Mushrooms starts. And for those of you who don't know, it is essentially what they used for Professor Oak's theme in the lab. And so I'm sitting there and I'm tapping her. She knows nothing about Pokemon, and I'm saying, "This is a song from Pokemon. I can't believe it." Fully knowing that more so that Pokemon and the developers took that song. And I thought we were going to be able to do a whole lot more to Oddish than that. Well, anyway, so fully, knowing that, and she could not care less. And one of the first things I thought to myself was, "Oh my gosh, how is she going to say yes to a nerd like me?" Well, she did. So everything worked out for the right. But that's a really cool rabbit hole to start going down. Is if any of you ever want to take a look at that, about the way that they developed a lot of the music for these Pokemon games, at least for the first ones. Now, Oddish here is a really interesting bulbous Pokemon. It really looks like an onion, or like a tuber from the ground. I never used Oddish a ton. I think the games that I always had more so had Bellsprout in them. I've definitely used Bellsprout before in playthroughs. And I used Oddish, though, very recently in a playthrough where I did an all-grass type playthrough in Pokemon Emerald. That was a lot of fun, but I did find that Vileplume was... maybe it was just Gen 3 and not having a ton of great moves for grass types, but I just found that in the early generations, grass types really were reliant on being the status indicator, or imposing status on other Pokemon, as opposed to really just having a brute all-out force, which is tough in a playthrough. Alright. Let's see here. I think we can go one more without healing. There's still one underground we can go to right here. Alright, now... Oh, I was going to go up just one little bit. Luckily, Mac should be able to take care of business here. This is the nice part about getting a Pikachu early on is you're gonna be taking care of all these Zubats in the cave. Nothing you can do about the Geozoos, but the Zubats, you're not gonna be too annoyed with. Alright, TM01. Let's face this Rocket. Now in this game, as you notice, they're just called Rocket. You don't have Rocket Grunt. You might have Rocket Admin, or that might just be Gen 2. But really the big boss is Giovanni, as you all probably know. I always felt somewhat attacked that Giovanni was an Italian name, as being an Italian myself. But we can get over that. Oh, come on, Mac. Oh. Alright, let's switch Squirt in. I just would hate to lose all that experience. Alright, good that we don't have a Supersonic coming our way. Alright, very nice. And Squirt grew to level 16. I wonder what's gonna happen for Squirt. You know what? Yeah, let's change Pokemon. Let's put Mama out. So Squirt went to level 16 and Mama is at level 15. Let's use a Scratch here. Nice! Way to go, Mama! Rap is the worst in this game. You're not gonna be able to, you can't move until the other side's rap concludes. I'm sure there's some joke about a musician rapping in there, but I am a little too peeved right now to think of that. Alright, let's hope we can get this off and kill him. Nice. And Mama grew to level 16. Excellent, guys. Alright, we got a lot of level ups from this Grunt. What? Squirt is evolving! Nice! Squirt evolved into Wartortle. Very nice. And Mama's evolving! Both in the same battle. Mama evolved into Nidorina. Wow. Alright. Let's see this. Okay, Squirt. And our new Mama. Awesome. And right over here. If you check that rock, you get an ether. And I think, you know what we'll do? I think we'll go and heal. Okay, and we are back from healing. One thing I wanted to show, we faced a few Zubats while I was gone. And Mac leveled up 1 level. And now Mac knows Quick Attack. So that is really helpful moving forward. Just to, sometimes Mac can do a little bit more damage to someone who resists an electric attack. It's not going to do anything for any Geodudes or against any hikers that we might face, but I think this guy's a youngster, which is going to be at least a little bit helpful. There we go. All right. Let's see. All right, Mac. Let's look at Quick Attack. I love this animation too, how he just fades off screen. You know what? We will change Pokemon. Let's see Squirt's debut as a Wartortle. Nice! This is a great back sprite. It's really funny too. I love how Wartortle looks like it has a little snaggle tooth or like tooth sticking out right above its shell, that little white pixel. And let's go back to Mac. Great work. Great work, Mac. I hope now you can see why it looks like Mac has a little zit with a big white head on the top left. Losing stinks. Trust me, my man. I know. I know that all too well. Okay. I still can't get over the fact that both of them evolved in the same level. Or the same battle. That's really funny. I know that they evolved at the same level, but that was some great timing. Very rare that happens in a playthrough. I can't remember the last time that happened for me. One thing to keep in mind about these games is that if a Pokemon faints before it went in a battle where it should evolve, then it's going to, then it won't actually end up evolving. And you gotta wait until the next level. And we got ourselves a Moonstone. Now, some of you will know that the Moonstone is a very important item, especially for the way that we've built our team. The Moonstone is a stone that we can use to evolve our Nidorina into Nidoqueen. I think I'm going to hold off on evolving Nidorina just yet. Nidoqueen is a great Pokemon, but I think we want to see how I think we want to use I think I want to use Nidorina a little bit more than just immediately evolving it up. I know that that's the benefit of having the Moonstone so early. One other reason that I want to hold off on it is because Nidoqueen gains the ground type when you evolve it. And now that's great. Ground is an awesome type, especially in this generation. Earthquake is incredibly powerful. However, I want to hold off on it for two reasons. The first is that I think that there's only downside to evolving your Nido, either Nidorino or Nidorina, right at this point. So the first downside is that you gaining the ground type, it makes you weak to Misty's water typing. And right now we have an electric type on our team. We also have another water type, which is going to resist the water damage. But Squirt's not going to be getting a lot of good output there. We really would solely be relying on Mac. And so in that sense, you gain that weakness to Misty's Pokemon. Now, some of you might be saying, okay, well, Nidoran or Nidorina right now is already a poison type, which is going to be weak to Starmie's additional psychic typing. And you're absolutely right with that. However, Misty's lead Pokemon, Staryu, does not have psychic typing. So if you need to use a few Pokemon to get through Misty, which you probably do, it's better, in my opinion, to keep Nidorina or Nidoran male as just their unevolved form for that Misty fight. So that way you don't get a weakness to the lead Staryu. The other reason why you don't want to evolve it, why I think it's an easy choice not to evolve it, is because in gaining that ground typing, which again is awesome, you really don't gain any ground moves. Actually, you don't gain any ground moves as soon as you evolve. The first time you're going to get a ground move that you can put on your Nido is going to be right after the Misty fight, when you're leaving Cerulean. So at that point, I think you definitely want to evolve your Nidoran, or your Nidorina, or Nidorino. I don't think that, though, it's a smart move to do it before the Misty fight. So for all those reasons, I think we'll get a few battles in with our Nidorina. Maybe we'll see. Maybe we'll keep her as a Nidorina for a little bit more. We can evolve her at any time right now. Hyper Fang is very dangerous. Alright. Well, speaking of, Mama's gonna get her debut battle. Let's use Poison Sting, because I'd love to get this guy poisoned. I know it's probably not our strongest output, but we're gonna probably go back to heal anyway. So, let's see if we can get a, that is brutal. I forgot that Hyper Fang can flinch. And we're not getting any help here. Alright. Let's get Squirt in here to do some damage control. The Raticate is tough, man. I forgot how difficult this Raticate can be. Alright, and for what feels like the millionth time, let's go and heal. Okay, we are back, and I was just about to hit unpause, but we ran into a Clefairy. Now, I don't think we're going to use Clefairy on our team, but I wanted to at least show this because Clefairy is a difficult encounter here. Clefairy only has a 6% chance of appearing. Mac also gained a level, so Mac loves leveling up when we go back to heal on pause. Let's see, let's try a few Pokeballs, see if we can catch this Clefairy. Alright! Clefairy, only in rare places. You know what? Yes, we will nickname Clefairy Pause in honor of our newfound ability. You know, Mac is... I think I'm gonna switch Mama up front. Yeah, because we can run away from some encounters going forward. In case we run into anything. We only have 2 more battles here in Mount Moon. As you can tell, Mount Moon is pretty long. It's not that difficult to get through. I think you just need to make sure that you have the right team in place, that you probably don't mind backtracking a little bit. Alright, let's run. Alright, Team Rocket is going to find some fossils and sell them for cash. Alright, let's go, Mama. do Scratch. All right, Scratch is doing some serious work here. I think our ability to poison is a little bit lower than I thought with Poison Sting. So we're probably going to want to get rid of that unless it's super effective or... Yeah, I don't think we're going to keep it very often. Or for very long, I should say. Alright, and now we have Zubat. This is what we saved Mac for. Yeah, no, we're not going to overthink this one. Alright, we can take that. Because I think we'll use some potions to heal up before we face the final trainer in this portion. We probably too. We're getting a fair amount of money, and I don't think we're going to really use that for a ton. So I think what we can do is we probably could just heal up. I think there's an item here. Yeah, there's another Moonstone. All right. Nah, this... Let's hope we can run away from this, or it's going to put a real damper in some of our plans. Okay, great. I'm going to save here, just in case things get hairy. Alright, hey, stop. I found these fossils. They're both mine. Well, I don't think both of them are going to be yours, buddy. I wish both of them were mine, especially if we beat you, but we're going to play fair. Alright, let's try out some Mama Scratches. Not a Scratch. Okay, we'll take that. Alright, great. This is where Mama's defensive capabilities really come into shine, because Mama is... Nidorina is pretty strong. Especially in its ability to attack, but especially in a long playthrough, man, sometimes defense is pretty good if you compare that with a pretty strong attacker. Let's put Mac in here. Mac can hopefully get some quick attacks in and not take much damage from Voltorb. Excellent. Spread out some of the love on experience. And then coughing. You know what? I think we're going to keep Mac in. Yeah, let's keep Mac in. The coughing sprite here is hilarious. I love that its skull and crossbones poison is above its head here, which I think at some point they must have realized they needed to redo. I'd be interested in that, how they made that decision, but excellent. And then a quick attack to finish it off, and Super Nerd goes down. Okay, I'll share. Which fossil do we want? So your choices here are the Helix fossil and the Dome fossil. The Helix fossil will turn into Omanite and then Omastar, and the Dome fossil will be Kabuto into Kabutops. I usually pick the Helix fossil, so let's go with the Dome fossil here to get Kabuto. I do like Kabuto. I think I like Omanite a little bit more in the design. They're both water rock Pokemon, and I think Omanite looks a bit more like a water rock type. Kabuto, not so much, unless you know that it's based on the Horseshoe Crab. And I always enjoy the Horseshoe Crab Pokemon because when we go on down the shore in the summer, sometimes you'll still see some horseshoe crabs that pop up on the beach. So it's always a nice little reminder of times that are a bit warmer than we are in January and February right now. And now, finally, we exit Mount Moon. I think what I'm gonna do is let's spend just a little bit more time and see if we can get to Cerulean. Maybe save up, go to Cerulean, and go from there. Now, if you come over here, you gotta be really careful in this part because you can be somewhat, I wouldn't call it soft locked, but if you aren't careful, oh, actually, I was mistaken. I thought you could learn Mega Punch and Mega Kick up here, but I think that's only in maybe Pokemon Yellow. Huh. Okay then. Well, I guess you can't. Well, so now we can't go back to that area. It's a good thing we got HM4. And now that we are in Cerulean City, I think now is a perfect time to end this session. Next time on PokePaths, we will be taking on the Cerulean Gym, we will be seeing Nugget Bridge, and we'll go find out what is going on past Nugget Bridge with someone named Bill. Thanks for tuning in.